If you're like me, you could definitely use some extra cash right now. So if you're sitting on old engagement jewelry that's been collecting dust in a drawer that you're like, why do I even still have this? I've got news for you. The experts at Worthy can help you turn that into cash. The cash you could probably use right now on your single parenting journey. It's risk-free, it's fast, literally no more than 2 weeks until you are joining one of the 80,000 people who have already had their jewelry turned into cash. Thousands of people have left verified 5-star reviews. This is a legit process that will make you feel so much lighter and your pockets a lot fuller. Trust me, these guys are the real deal. So all you need to do is visit worthy.com/moms, and I'm going to give you an extra $100 on me if your jewelry sells for over $1,500. That's worthy.com/moms, and I've got you covered. Welcome back to the Moving On Method episode. It's been a couple of weeks since I have sat down to record something new for you, and I've been racking my brain on what it is I thought that you needed to hear most at this time. And so in the interest of authenticity, I've created this conversation for you today between you and I, nobody else, on something that I myself have had a lot of trouble navigating as a co-parent now for 8.5 years. And something I see all of my clients struggle with, both men and women. And this is the illusion of control, why we crave it, why it becomes such an obsession for us, why it's kind of natural in a lot of ways, but also how this desire for control is ruining not only our experience as co-parents, but our experience in owning our own power as parents. I'm your host, Michelle Dempsey-Multack, and we're really going to get into this situation that every divorced parent wrestles with at some point. If you've ever caught yourself thinking, if I could just make my ex do this differently, or if only my kids reacted the way I wanted them to, you're definitely not alone. But here's the truth. Nobody likes to hear it. Control in co-parenting is like trying to hold water in your hands. No matter how tightly you squeeze, it's going to slip through your fingers. So let's talk about this first piece, control and why we crave it. Let's be honest. After divorce, everything feels unpredictable, and you just want this like magic 8-ball response to tell you what's going to happen and when, how it's going to feel, and then everything's going to work out okay, right? But as we know, even in the best of situations, we have no control. We can't decide. We have no power to determine what comes next. Your marriage ended, something you didn't expect to happen. And now, the worst part, your kids are moving between homes. Their routines are shifting. Everything you've worked to build up until this point is now going to change. And you're stuck navigating a relationship with someone you probably don't even like or very much trust at this point. So, of course, you want control. It feels like the safest way to protect your kids and yourself. But control is funny because if you've been told, oh, you're so controlling, you know it's not done with ill intent. You know it's done because you just want things to turn out okay in the way that you believe is okay. You want it as a reassurance for yourself. You want it as a reassurance for your anxiety. You want it as a reassurance to have nothing to worry about. And you want it because you believe that if things work out the way you decide they should, that is the best way. But here's the problem. That control that you're reaching for, it doesn't actually exist. You can't control what happens in your ex's house. You can't control how your children feel when they're there, what they're exposed to, what they're hearing, what they're watching, what they're eating. Certainly can't control how they feel about transitions or the fact that now they have to move between two homes. You're literally not going to be able to control every curveball that life throws your way. And that especially includes co-parenting. That especially includes when you're dealing with an ex who's very happy to be out of the grasp of your control or what they perceived as you trying to be controlling. Controlling in co-parenting is an illusion because it truly depends on someone else behaving the way you want them to. And let's be honest, if they did that, you probably wouldn't be in the situation today that you're in, right? The marriage would have worked. They would have finally changed or listened or behaved in the way you felt you deserved they should behave. But that never worked out. And when has trying to control anything worked out long term? Think about it. How often in trying to control your ex-spouse in marriage lead to resentment or conflict versus how often did it actually pan out the way you wanted to, right? Trying to have that control in a relationship, trying to control the narrative, trying to control someone else's behavior, all that does is push someone further away from you. So the same applies here. The tighter we grip, the more frustrated we become because people, especially children, don't thrive under force. How many times have I told my daughter, only one cookie? One cookie. We were at a birthday party. There was cake, there was sugar. You have to go to bed soon. All of a sudden, that one cookie does nothing. But I just want one more. I just want one more, right? If I said, sure, you could have the cookie, all of a sudden, nobody's asking for a second. But all that to say, this is why so many parents feel burned out, angry, defeated. They're stuck in the cycle of expectation. And all I like to say is that expectation is the root of all heartache. He should do this, or he should have said this. She should stop saying that. The kids should listen better. The kids should know better. And when those expectations are unmet, what happens? Disappointment follows. And then this narrative in our head continues. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. They're never going to be able to do things right, or they're never going to be able to do things I want them to. And when they don't, you believe this narrative that your control is the only way that things should go, right? Your expectations need to be met. But you're only hurting yourself because then who's left to sit with that resentment? Not your ex. Maybe your kids, because the feelings will rub off on them, but it's certainly not going to change who your ex is and what they do, right? So what's that notion, that saying, holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. It's very much the same with control. So what does letting go look like, right? Because we know we need to let go. We know we can't continue this way. What does it mean to let go? Does it mean just throwing your hands up in the air and saying, screw it, whatever happens, happens, I don't care anymore? No. I mean, there's some semblance of that because you do have to get comfortable with the discomfort of not being able to effectuate any sort of decision or change while your kids are in the other home, right? But what you do get to decide is the most powerful part of all. And it's twofold, really. Number one, you get to decide how you are going to show up in every situation. If you are giving the kids mandates and rules and setting expectations for them to meet in the other home, what's going to happen? They're going to feel anxious, stressed. They're going to come back to you with a pit in their stomachs, knowing that maybe they didn't follow your rules in the other parent's house. We don't want to do that. The second part is really just looking at yourself and where you want to put your energy. It's recognizing that you can't decide what your ex feeds the kids on their nights, but you can model healthy eating in your own home. Modeling healthy eating without making a show of, and in this house, we only eat greens. No, you just model. You control what you can control, which is what happens in your home. You definitely can't control if your co-parent speaks negatively about you. And if you're in this situation, I feel for you because it's terrible. But you can teach your kids critical thinking skills and resilience. If they come home and they say, Mommy, Daddy said that you're a bad mom. Okay. How did it feel when you heard that? Probably not good, right? Well, what does it mean to be a bad mom versus a good mom? And you talk that out and you let your kids decide for themselves. You don't meet this with, oh, well, I'm a bad mom. Well, you should tell him. That's not what's going to be helpful. You control yourself in the situation and you show your kids something very different than what their other parent is trying to describe, and they're going to know what feels right, right? The sad part is you can't control how your kids feel about the divorce, right? Like we want to make all their discomfort go away and control that feeling inside of them. We don't want them to feel upset or heartbroken. We can't change that. And they're entitled to those feelings, right? Because divorce is a hard thing for a kid as they're adapting and as they're adjusting. But what we can control is how safe and connected to us they feel in our presence. There's no harm in going overboard and reassuring your kids a million times a day that even when you're not with me, I love you. Even when you're at dad's house, I love and support you. I'm always here for you no matter what. And matching that energy when they come to you in distress or when they come to you and say, I miss my other parent. Sure, you're going to wish you can control that feeling, but that's a natural thing for a kid. And you meet that with, I'm sure you do. This is a hard thing to adjust to. There you are. You're the safe space for their feelings. So I want you to know that letting go of this illusion of control doesn't mean giving up. It doesn't mean putting all the power in your ex's hands because power is also a perception. No one has power in this situation, right? Even if you think they do or they have the type of personality which makes you feel like they're in control, they're not. Letting go means shifting from how do I make them do it my way to what's within my control that helps my kids thrive. And there's a powerful difference there. Now let's talk about surrendering. Love the idea of surrender. There's freedom in surrender. Because here's the surprising thing. Once you surrender the illusion of control, you actually gain peace. Your energy stops being wasted on battles you can't win and instead gets poured into the things that matter most: your relationship with your children, your own healing, building a life that feels good again outside of divorce, learning to trust yourself again, honoring your gut intuition. And that freedom, that positive energy that you're now channeling, you're taking all of the focusing on the negative and channeling it into positive for yourself, for your kids. That freedom, your kids feel too. They feel when you're calm instead of anxious. They feel when you're grounded instead of bitter. That is their stability. And that's what helps them grow into resilient, amazing little humans. It's not really about whether every bedtime looks exactly the same in both households. That's your fear, and it leads to nothing. So here's my challenge for you today. I want you to write down one thing about co parenting that you cannot control. Like, be brutally honest with yourself. The thing that drives you the most crazy. Then, in light of that, write down one thing you can do for yourself or your children that is completely within your control. It's definitely a practice and a mindset shift. And I'm not saying, by tomorrow morning, you're going to feel so much better about giving up some control to your ex. But the more you release the illusion and focus on what you can control, what you do effectuate change with, the lighter you're going to feel, the less burdened you'll feel, and the stronger your kids are going to become in light of it. I really hope this conversation helped you because it's something that I have had to work with for myself for years. I mean, I'm a control freak by nature in so many different ways, and it's just ironic that the one thing I can't control, which is how my daughter feels or what her experiences are, is the one thing I want to control most. But being able to pull back has not only saved my sanity, it has made my co-parenting relationship better because I'm not here waiting to criticize every move and action. It has made me show up better in my time with my daughter because I get her on my time and I can do things the way I want them and we can have conversations and I can validate her emotions and make her feel strong and empowered in using her voice. And so I want you to remember that your power as a parent doesn't come from controlling every variable. It comes from modeling grace, resilience, and love. It's not what you say, it's what you do. It's not what you say, it's how you do it, how you show up. So I want you to take that today and really think about doing that exercise, that activity. Feel free to share it with me. And remember that I'm always here for you. This has been one of my favorite topics to talk about for so long. And I'm so glad I brought it to you today on the Moving On Method podcast. So until next time, take a deep breath, let go of what isn't yours, and focus on what truly matters. You've done it before and you can do it again.